Our theme this month is non-attachment. Non-attachment. And my topic today is when my heart listens. When my heart listens. So, this is 9/11. It's been 15 years since the 9/11 that we always think of here in the United States, but there have been other 9/11s, not the least of which back earlier in the 20th century, I believe it was 1918, and I'm not mistaken, when Gandhi was leading the revolution in South Africa. People think of Gandhi from India, but they forget. Gandhi started out in South Africa. And there's just so much that goes on in our collective consciousness, particularly here in the nation at this particular time. And I want to acknowledge that, and I want to say that when people pass or there's any kinds of tragedy, that there is a mourning and there is a grieving that is appropriate. And for everybody who is impacted by that in the United States, our heart and our empathy is still connected to that. And there's a healing that has to happen. We have to go the next step. Our theme this month is non-attachment. It's non-attachment. My spirit definitions define non-attachment. It says that it's when your desires, the desires that you have for your own kinds of outcomes, particularly when your desire for certainty, yes, your desire for certainty dissipates into my infinite possibilities. Our desire for certainty. My mentor, the Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith, always taught us that there were at least two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. Listen to what I'm saying. There are at least two to every story, and then there's the truth. Personally, I've got a whole committee inside of me. There are more than two sides to the story just within me. So let alone bring some other people into the mix. And whereas I'm all for compassion, and I do conflict resolution professionally, I'm all for that, but at some point, we have to move beyond just trying to hear each other's side. Because there's a thing called the truth. You can really hear each other's side and still not hit on the truth. If you really want to hear the truth, you have to be willing to let go of your side. Okay. You have to be willing to let go of your side. And you go, well, but what if I'm right? So what? This has got nothing to do with right or wrong. But perhaps your attachment to being right is part of the problem. It's not the fact that you're right, but what your being right means within the context of the relationship or the circumstance, particularly if you're using it as a power play. Breathe on that. We're just getting started. I remember an example I gave about this years ago. That sometimes you may be right. If I'm your parent, and you're my 15-year-old child, who doesn't have a driver's license or permit, and you take the keys to my new car, and you go joyriding in my new car, drunk, and total my new car, you wrong. hands down, you are wrong. However, if I just get stuck in that you're wrong, there's not going to be any healing. There's not going to be any solution. I'm not listening anymore because I'm being so right and I'm being punitive. But if I stop and ask the harder questions, like, what is my 15-year-old doing drunk? That may just have something to do with me. Listen to what I'm saying. If I stop and ask that question, it just may have something to do with me. But I have to let go of my attachment about being right. Yes? 9/11. We always hear about the Twin Towers going down. And of course they did. But there were 3 targets, 9/11. The Pentagon was also hit. Over 200 people died at the Pentagon. Nobody ever talks about that. Have you noticed? Nobody ever wants to admit or say that the Pentagon was hit. And I sometimes wonder if there would have been shock and awe and some of that other stuff if the Pentagon hadn't been hit. Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and the White House. Now, when you're doing an investigative crime scene, you're always looking for the links. If there have been 3 targets by the same quote-unquote criminal, you try to get into their minds. There's some kind of pattern. There's something that's going on, yes? There's something that's happening. The United States wasn't chosen out of the yellow pages. You have American Airlines. You have United Airlines. On our emergency number, 911, you have the White House, our executive branch, who's over our military and world commerce. I don't know. But maybe there's a connection between those 3. Maybe. And if we apply the same kind of simple logic about the teenager driving my car drunk, that if I ask the question, why was there a 9/11, maybe, just maybe, it might have something to do with me. Maybe, just maybe. But until we start to have some non-attachment to being right, non-attachment to our side, we are never, ever, ever going to get to truth. We are never, ever, ever going to have peaceful relationships. I'm sure you've been through this. Anybody ever been in couples counseling or like counseling with your family? Or even any sort of mediation or something at your work or your job? It really doesn't shift until that moment when there is a commitment to something greater than you. When there's a commitment to your family, there's a commitment to your marriage or the partnership, there's a commitment to the job or the company or the community or whatever that is that you are all connected to, until there is a sense of, I'm going to do something for something greater, that's when the breakthrough happens. Are you with me? When my heart listens. Most of us, when we go into counseling, particularly things like couples counseling, it's our hope that if we bring a third party in, they can get through to this bozo. Most people don't go to counseling to learn a doggone thing. They go to counseling hoping that a third party can help teach what they haven't been able to get through on. That's why they go. And I'm telling you now, it never ends. It never ends by you being heard. That isn't what makes it end. It ends when you listen. When you have a new pair of ears. When you allow yourself to hear something you didn't want to hear before or didn't even know existed. Yes? Breathe. At least two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. Differences in and of themselves do not cause conflict. It's polarization around the differences that causes conflict. Differences of opinion have never caused a conflict. It isn't until we start to be opposed to each other because of it. Our ego has such an attachment to our ideas and our positions so that if you disagree with my position, you disagree with me. And we think we're fighting over stuff, but it's me that I'm really fighting over. And we equate love with sameness. When you do it like me, when you act like me, then that's how I know you love me. You got to mirror me back to me the way that I think it should look like. That's a whole lot of attachment. That's a whole lot of attachment. The Buddhists say that the root of all evil is desire. It's that attachment. Am I saying that you give up on dreams? No. What I am saying is that you give up on the specificity of how you think it has to come into being. You don't give up on having a great relationship with your kids. You just give up what you think that's got to look like. You can't go back. You cannot go back. And this idea of trying to ever recreate anything again does not work. And it is a setup for failure. You can take the best of what you have experienced before and have it allow you to have a possibility of what could be in the future, but you can never go back. You can't recreate anything. Are you with me? And this attachment that we have to how it was before, or how we think it should have been, or ought to have been. Life shows up new. We can learn everything that we ever need to know by looking at nature. There's a particular situation in my own life that I've been having trouble trying to reconcile. And I've been using that word with myself a lot, trying to reconcile. And as I was preparing dinner last night, that inner voice said to me, winter does not try to reconcile spring. Winter doesn't try to reconcile spring. When it's winter, it's winter. And when it's spring, it's spring. Winter isn't trying to be spring. And spring isn't trying to be winter. That each season has its own purpose. Are you with me? The winter isn't whining about the leaves that aren't there in the spring, that were there in the spring. And the winter's not trying to make the leaves that are going to be there next spring. The spring isn't trying to hold on to the leaves for fear of the winter coming. And everything its own season. If it's supposed to be there, it will get recreated again. Listen to what I just said. It will get recreated again. That's the natural order of things. The body that you have is not the body you had last week. It's not the body that you had last month. It's not the body that you had last year. Why? Because it is recreating itself. The thoughts that you had today, if they mirror the thoughts that you had yesterday, it is not because yesterday's thoughts have followed you into today. If you have the same thought today that you had yesterday, it is because you have recreated it again today. This is good news, and this is bad news. But the main news is that we have choice. We are not responsible for all the thoughts that come to us, only the ones we keep and nurture. Only the ones that we keep and nurture. We are about oneness here. We are about oneness. And that has to be in the absolute. It can't be, yeah, but. Well, yeah, the oneness, but what about Trump? Well, oneness, but what about ISIS? Oneness and oneness, yeah, but what about my ex? What about him? What? You believe in oneness or you don't. As long as you're looking for exclusions, you're not in the oneness. Anytime there's a but, you're not in the oneness. Make it an and. And this one. Lord, show me how to bring this one into the oneness that I know. Not all the evidence of how this one or that one doesn't belong there. And this isn't no insult to the Trump supporters in the house. This isn't about anybody or anything in particular. Because what I know is that it goes the same way. That the people on the other side of the political divide are going, well, what about the gay people? What about all those new agey people? What about the pagans? What about the this? Everybody's like a what about? Well, the real what about, please stand up. It's about the oneness. It's about the oneness. We will never get to the healing. We will never get to our full potential without the oneness. And newsflash, you have to want for everybody what you want for yourself. You can never have any place that's safe if in your efforts for safety you're making it unsafe for other people. You have to want safety for everybody. Can we get to the point where we're looking for a world that works for everyone? If our emphasis is on just trying to get rid of or wipe out whatever, we're not going to make it. It just changes. It becomes a script, like that idea, quote unquote, the black sheep. If you have families that have that construct, every generation there's going to be somebody. Because it's a script. And it's just waiting to be filled. And if we get in this script of the victim, villain, the hero, that little triangle thing, if we stay in that construct, it will always be somebody. And I'm calling us up now, particularly in this very contentious, heated environment, to get beyond the divisiveness, to get beyond the otherness. Because when you peel it all away and you rise up to a more transcendent place, you will find that there's actually more that we have in common than what we may think. But we can't see it because of the divisiveness. So I'm doing this training now called For Such a Time as This, Advanced Skills Building for Societal Oneness. And it's not for the faint-hearted, I'm telling you, but it's open. It's Mondays and Wednesdays, noon Pacific time, now through the end of September. Online, telephone, some people are coming in, and we've been going deep on many, many issues. And this was an article that actually Kaylee Dugan sent to me. And I won't read the whole thing, but it was so instructive to me. This was an article, it's called A Challenge to My Fellow Evangelicals. And it's written by a woman, Deborah Fikes, and this came out August 19th of this year. So it wasn't that long ago. And Deborah Fikes says that she previously served as a board member of the National Association of Evangelicals and as the executive advisor to the World Evangelical Alliance. She holds a graduate degree in international law from Oxford University. She says that from 2007 to 2016, I worked with the World Evangelical Alliance, where I represented 130 national alliances with a constituency of 600 million members. I traveled to many countries and saw how evangelicals engage politically all over the world. These observations come from that work. Okay? I'm just going to give you the observations. I'm not even going to give you the context in why she's giving this, because I don't want the message skewed. These are her observations. 1, only in the United States is climate change a controversial and politicized issue. Evangelicals in 129 countries support their government's efforts to face this challenge. 2, evangelicals in other countries do not consider a national health care system as a controversial issue, and in fact, see it as highly desirable. I'm not picking on evangelicals. I was raised an evangelical. Okay? What I'm trying to show you is that maybe there's not as much divide as we cook up in our minds. 3, one of the highest priorities for a majority of evangelicals around the world is for their governments to combat poverty and hunger, improve public education, and provide clean water for all citizens, even if this means paying more taxes. 4, evangelicals from other countries want to see their government buy fewer weapons and invest in economic development and peace initiatives. 5, globally, evangelicals disapprove of torture being used by their governments in any form. 7, our evangelical brothers and sisters cannot comprehend that American evangelicals are so overwhelmingly opposed to any gun control reform. 8, nuclear disarmament and eventual abolition of nuclear weapons is not even questioned among the vast majority of evangelicals in other countries. 9, except for countries with high populations of Muslims, protecting vulnerable LGBT citizens and other social justice issues are not viewed as being part of a quote-unquote liberal agenda. 10, whether abortion is legal or illegal, a majority of evangelicals in other countries have not prioritized this in their politics. Where abortion is illegal, evangelicals are more concerned about the high rate of maternal deaths that result from quote-unquote bedroom abortions. Last one, 11. Evangelicals in other countries working to help refugees and internally displaced people have questioned if Americans who support Mr. Trump are reading from a different Bible. Because theirs is very clear that, quote unquote, welcoming the stranger is a Judeo-Christian priority. All of these stances are viewed as being pro-life and pro-family. Okay? The point being, don't get attached to your side. Don't get attached to identity. Don't get attached to who you think is doing what. Have a vision. Have a vision of the world that you want to see. Speak that vision and let whomever can be a part of that vision aligned with you. We miss the opportunities for collaboration. We miss the opportunities to work together too often because we look across the divide and say, you're not one of us. Or we don't like you. Or I don't trust you. Or whatever that is. But if more of us spoke a vision, what kind of world do you want? What do you want? In this, for such a time as this class that we've been doing, this drop-in 1-hour program that I was talking about on Mondays and Wednesdays, that an exercise that we've been doing is taking a look at very hard issues, from homelessness to social justice, looking at political reform, all kinds of things, gun control, and saying, what's the first two things that come out of your mind? Just write the first two things. And people were noticing that the first two things that came out of their mind were negative or somehow fear-based. Negative or fear-based. Say, where's the vision? Pain pushes until vision pulls. And I had this incredible epiphany myself in that. And I thought, well, no wonder so many people who are on very, very conservative ends of politics want to say that the justices that are upholding the law and the Constitution are somehow being activists, that are somehow out of step and pushing their own agendas. Because nobody in society or so few people talking about what they really want to see. So it can give the appearance that everybody believes the negative thing. Because that's the conversations that we're leading with. Are you with me? So what's the first thing? What's the first thing? And when we're talking about the non-attachment, don't have attachment to labels. Because the labels stop us from seeing people. From seeing people. Martin Luther King talked about this when he was talking about Paul Tillich. He says we move from the I-thou relationship to an I-it relationship. We start talking about the homeless, the terrorist, the addicted, the this. No. Can you imagine if we stopped talking about homelessness and started talking about the fact that there aren't enough homes for people? Can you imagine if we stopped talking about the homeless and said people without homes? Can you imagine if that came out our mouth enough times, people without homes? What a different place within us that would have. I remember Susie Herrera, one of our congregants, wrote a beautiful book called Mango Elephants in the Sun. And it was about her experience as a Peace Corps volunteer in Cameroon in Africa. She was trying to explain to them that they were wrong in their perception that all Americans were wealthy. She was trying to explain that not everybody's wealthy, but trying to explain, quote unquote, the homeless. And they couldn't get it. There was no place in their psyche to imagine the idea of homeless. They were like, well, don't the other people in the village have homes? Why is anybody out on the street when there are homes? You hear what I'm saying? It's like, it couldn't even register. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this is because we have allowed too many of the social ills to become just the way that it is. Just the way that it is. We think maybe it kind of might be possible, but we live in more fear of all of the reasons why it can't be. And then we're attached to all the reasons why we think it can't be. No, 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 no. Have your vision and non-attachment about what it's going to take to get there. Have your vision and no attachment to who you think is going to get in the way. Have your vision and don't have any attachment to what has been in the past as being a reason why the truth can't be set free today. I'm talking about today. I am talking about in the now. It really doesn't take all that long. We are watching it just in our lifetime. Obviously, racism is not over. Truly. But we're watching apartheid fall. We're watching forced segregation fall right here. Why? Because people have been bold enough, particularly the younger ones, to say, I ain't having it. Motown did more to end racism than any laws. I'm telling you. And I say thank you to all the white-haired people, the white-haired people in the room, the boomers like me, for the courage to say, we're not having it. We're going to party together. We're going to be friends together. We're going to do this thing together. And for all the people that said, no, you know what, I'm not going to ostracize my brothers and my sisters or my children or my parents or whatnot because they're not straight. Or I'm not going to ostracize the people in my community or on my job because they're Muslim. Or I'm not going to ostracize this one or that one just because they don't have their papers. The United States has been built on the backs of people that ain't had no papers. And that includes the so-called pilgrims. I don't think any native peoples issued them visas to come legally into their land. And yet there's opportunity here to love. There's opportunity to care. There's opportunity for oneness. Listen to what I'm saying, because this is so not about an election. Because I don't care who wins, the day after the election, we still got all us. Not a doggone thing is going to change, except the quote-unquote uncertainty of who's going to occupy the White House. But we as a nation are still going to be stuck with all of us. So what kind of world do you want? Will your heart listen? Will you be willing to see? Can you live the oneness? My God, my Jesus spoke to everybody. The Jews, the Gentiles, the Greeks, the Ethiopians, the Romans. Wouldn't let them in the temple? Fine, I'll preach on the rocks. I'll preach anywhere. That's what I know. Can we have that kind of boldness? Can we have that much? That we're willing to share whatever it is that we have. Willing to embrace our homes, our lives. Want the same thing for everybody's family that we want for our own. It's possible. And the Lord's Prayer is an our prayer. It's none of my prayer. It's our bread, our guidance, our forgiveness, our debts. It's an our prayer. So I want to invite you, when you do your prayers, do an our prayer. Whatever that is that you were imagining for yourself, imagine it for everybody. Don't have attachment just to you and yours. Because there's only one of us here. Let's pray.